Imagine walking into a room full of powerful people who look straight through you like you do not exist. Imagine smiles that disappear the moment you speak and silence that feels louder than insults. This is not a movie scene. This really happened to one USA girl whose own family, by marriage, treated her like air. They laughed with others, but never with her. They praised wealth but mocked simplicity. They believed status was everything. What they did not know was that the girl they ignored was the very person who could shake their perfect world in a single night. Stay with the story because what happened at that high-class party changed every face in the room forever. Her name was Ariana Cole. She was born in a quiet coastal town in Oregon where mornings smelled like rain and dreams felt bigger than houses. Ariana grew up different. She did not chase attention. She did not talk much about herself. She listened. She observed. From a young age, she learned that silence could protect secrets and secrets could protect power. Her father passed away early and her mother worked double shifts as a nurse. Life taught Ariana discipline, not luxury. Ariana was brilliant. She studied business analytics and international finance, but never bragged about it. She believed knowledge worked best when hidden. After graduation, she worked remotely for consulting firms under non-disclosure contracts. Her income was strong but invisible. No flashy cars. No designer bags. She lived simple because she wanted to. Her brother Ethan Cole was her opposite. Charming, socially ambitious, always dreaming of a bigger life. Ethan fell in love with Vanessa Whitmore, a woman from one of the most elite families on the East Coast. The Whitmore name opened doors. Old money, private clubs, generational influence. When Ethan married Vanessa, his life changed overnight. But Ariana did not. From the very first family dinner, the Whitmores judged Ariana without asking a single real question. They saw her modest dress. They heard her quiet voice. They assumed she depended on Ethan. They assumed she was irrelevant. Vanessa's mother, Margaret Whitmore, was polite but cold. Her smile never reached her eyes. Vanessa's father, Richard Whitmore, barely acknowledged Ariana's presence. Conversations flowed around her, not to her. Ariana noticed everything and reacted to nothing. Ethan noticed too. Before the wedding, Ethan pulled Ariana aside and asked her for one favor. Please do not talk about your work. Please keep things simple. My in-laws are very judgmental. I do not want drama. Ariana agreed without hesitation. She loved her brother more than her pride. After the wedding, the distance grew sharper. Family events became showcases of wealth. Luxury dinners, charity galas, high-profile parties. Ariana was always invited and always ignored. People asked what she did and lost interest the moment she answered vaguely. She became background noise in rooms full of voices. The Whitmores openly discussed business deals in front of her as if she could not understand. They joked about people who worked behind screens. They praised visible success and mocked quiet intelligence. Ariana sat there calm, patient, and observant. What no one knew was that Ariana had consulted for companies that directly influenced some of those very deals. She recognized names, strategies, and mistakes. She knew who was bluffing and who was failing. She kept it all to herself. Until the invitation arrived. It was a gold-embossed card announcing an exclusive high-class party hosted by the Whitmores. Investors, diplomats, CEOs, and media elites would attend. Attendance was by approval only. Ariana's name was on the list almost as an afterthought. Margaret whispered to Vanessa that Ariana would probably feel uncomfortable there. Vanessa suggested maybe Ariana should stay home. Ethan insisted his sister come. That night, Ariana wore a simple, elegant black dress. No labels. No jewelry except a thin silver bracelet her mother gave her. When she walked into the ballroom, chandeliers reflected confidence, not arrogance. Still no one noticed. First, people passed her. Conversations paused and resumed without her. She stood near a marble pillar watching everything unfold. Then a man across the room froze when he saw her face. His name was Jonathan Hale. One of the most powerful financial strategists in the country. His glass nearly slipped from his hand. He stared at Ariana like he had seen a ghost. And then he walked straight toward her. The room began to shift. Eyes followed him. Whispers started. Jonathan stopped in front of Ariana and smiled with deep respect. He said her name out loud. Not loud enough for the whole room, but loud enough for the people who mattered. And that was the moment the Whitmores realized they had made a mistake they could never undo. Jonathan Hale's presence alone carried weight heavier than the crystal chandeliers above them. Conversation slowed. Laughter softened. People who moments ago ignored Ariana suddenly pretended to recognize her. Jonathan stood close enough that it was impossible to miss the familiarity in his posture. Ariana greeted him calmly, like meeting an old colleague, not a legend. That calm shook people more than excitement ever could. Jonathan spoke with warmth. He said it had been years. He said he still remembered the night she corrected a boardroom full of executives with one sentence that saved a multi-million-dollar merger. He laughed quietly and said half the room did not even realize she was the brain behind that strategy. Ariana smiled gently and asked how his daughter was. Jonathan's eyes softened. He said she was at Stanford now studying economics, inspired by a woman who once told her intelligence meant nothing if it needed applause. That sentence alone landed like thunder. Nearby, Vanessa stiffened. Margaret Whitmore leaned forward, pretending to adjust her necklace, but clearly listening. Richard Whitmore stopped mid-conversation with his senator. Every Whitmore instinct screamed that something was wrong. Jonathan asked Ariana why she had disappeared from public consulting. Ariana answered honestly. She said she chose freedom over fame. She said quiet work allowed real impact. Jonathan nodded like a student agreeing with a master. He then turned slightly and gestured toward a group of men watching nervously. He said, Ariana, these gentlemen are finalizing a deal tonight. They could use your perspective if you have a moment. Ariana hesitated and glanced at Ethan across the room. Ethan looked confused and almost frightened. Ariana gave him a reassuring nod and followed Jonathan. The group gathered around a tall glass table. These were men whose names appeared in financial headlines. Men who rarely listened to anyone younger or quieter. Yet now they leaned in. Jonathan introduced her simply as Ariana Cole. No titles. No explanation. One man explained their investment strategy with confidence. Ariana listened patiently. She asked one question, then another. Her voice was calm, precise, and sharp. She pointed out a risk buried in page 37 of a document no one else mentioned. She explained how a foreign regulation change would collapse their expected margin within 6 months. Silence. Faces tightened. Then one man exhaled and admitted she was right. Another asked how she knew. Ariana explained the data trends casually, like discussing weather. Jonathan smiled proudly. Across the ballroom, Margaret Whitmore's face drained of color. She whispered to Vanessa, asking who exactly Ariana was. Vanessa shook her head, unable to answer. Richard Whitmore walked closer, pretending interest in the artwork, but listening carefully. When he heard Ariana mention a policy he himself had lobbied for, he froze. He realized she was not guessing. She knew. The group thanked Ariana sincerely. One man asked if she was available for private consultation. Ariana said maybe and smiled politely. Jonathan placed his hand briefly on her shoulder like a sign of respect. That single gesture rewrote the room hierarchy. Suddenly Ariana was not invisible. She was surrounded. People introduced themselves. Compliments flowed. Invitations followed. Ariana accepted nothing immediately. She answered kindly but briefly. She never bragged. She never explained herself. That restraint made her more powerful. Ethan finally approached. His voice trembled as he asked Ariana what was happening. Ariana told him calmly that nothing had changed. People were just seeing clearly for the first time. Vanessa joined them, forcing a smile too wide to be real. She apologized awkwardly for not knowing Ariana's background. Ariana replied softly that it was never hidden, just never asked about. Margaret approached next. Her tone had changed completely. She praised Ariana's elegance, intelligence, and humility. She said the family would love to know her better. Ariana nodded politely, but her eyes showed no excitement. Richard Whitmore cleared his throat and finally addressed Ariana directly. He admitted he underestimated her. He asked what firm she worked for. Ariana answered honestly. She said she worked for herself. That answer unsettled him more than any title could. Jonathan soon raised a glass, calling for attention. The room quieted. He spoke about recognizing true excellence when it does not need to announce itself. He thanked the Whitmores for hosting and thanked Ariana publicly for always reminding him what real intelligence looked like. Applause erupted. The Whitmores clapped the loudest. Ariana stood still, composed and silent. Inside the Whitmore family, something cracked permanently. They realized the girl they ignored held more influence than most people they worshipped. And the night was far from over. Because what happened next forced them to confront not just their mistake, but their arrogance. The applause slowly faded, but the energy in the ballroom had permanently shifted. Ariana felt it in the way people now waited for her reactions before speaking. She stepped away from the crowd toward a quieter terrace, where the city lights glowed below like scattered diamonds. She needed air, not attention. Jonathan followed her, but kept a respectful distance. He told her that the room was buzzing. People were asking questions. Old rivals were suddenly nervous. Ariana replied that none of that mattered. She said she came for her brother, not for validation. Inside the ballroom, Ethan sat beside Vanessa, struggling to process everything. Vanessa's world had cracked. For years she believed power had a specific look. Loud confidence inherited. Ariana had destroyed that belief without raising her voice. Margaret Whitmore pulled Richard aside. Her voice was sharp and low. She demanded to know why Jonathan Hale knew Ariana so well. Richard admitted he did not know. That terrified him. He had spent decades controlling information, and now he lacked it. Richard decided to act. He approached Ariana on the terrace with practiced calm. He spoke of family unity and future possibilities. He suggested Ariana could be an asset to the Whitmore network. He offered introductions to board seats influence. Ariana listened patiently, then responded gently. She said influence that comes from belonging to a name disappears when the name loses shine. She said she preferred influence built on results. Richard felt something he had not felt in years. Insecurity. He asked what she wanted. Ariana said nothing. That answer disturbed him. More than greed ever could. Jonathan later informed Ariana quietly that several investors wanted private meetings. Ariana declined again. She said tonight was not about business. Jonathan understood. He respected boundaries because he knew her value was not measured in deals. Meanwhile, Vanessa tried to regain control. She gathered a group around her and spoke loudly about charity initiatives and legacy families. But her words sounded hollow now. People smiled politely but glanced toward the terrace. Vanessa finally confronted Ariana directly. She asked why Ariana never mentioned her accomplishments. Ariana replied that people who listen do not need to announce. She said she assumed the family valued character over resumes. That sentence burned. Vanessa apologized again, but this time with visible emotion. She admitted she had misjudged her. Ariana accepted the apology without warmth or coldness. Simply honesty. Ethan watched all of this silently. Guilt weighed on him. He realized how often he asked his sister to shrink for his comfort. Later, he pulled Ariana aside and apologized. He said he should have defended her sooner. Ariana hugged him and said protection is sometimes silence and sometimes truth. Tonight was the truth. As the night progressed, a final surprise unfolded. Jonathan was not the only one who recognized Ariana. A woman named Claire Montgomery arrived late. A global foundation director whose endorsements shifted entire industries. The moment she saw Ariana, she rushed forward, ignoring protocol. She embraced Ariana warmly and laughed about old nights working through crisis models and policy reform. She praised Ariana for walking away when politics got ugly. Claire turned to the Whitmores and thanked them for hosting someone who had shaped international economic relief strategies. That sentence hit harder than applause. Margaret Whitmore's face turned pale. Richard looked physically shaken. They realized Ariana was not just successful. She was respected at the highest levels. Respect could not be bought. The party ended with whispers instead of laughter. Deals were postponed. Confidence cracked. The Whitmore's reputation took a subtle but irreversible hit. As guests left, many stopped to thank Ariana. Some asked for her number. She gave none. She left with Ethan quietly unnoticed again, but this time by choice. The next morning headlines would not mention her name, but boardrooms would. And the Whitmores would wake up understanding that elite status meant nothing without humility. Yet the final reckoning had not arrived, because the family dinner that followed would be far more uncomfortable than any ballroom. The family dinner was scheduled 3 nights later at the Whitmore estate. The house itself looked like a monument to legacy with tall pillars, cold marble, and walls filled with portraits of ancestors who believed their name alone shaped history. Ariana arrived with Ethan quietly. This time no one mistook her presence for decoration. Margaret greeted her with forced warmth. Richard shook her hand firmly, studying her face like trying to read a locked code. Vanessa hovered between pride and discomfort, unsure of her place now. Dinner began politely, but tension sat heavier than silverware. Conversations were careful. No one wanted to offend. That silence finally broke when Richard asked Ariana directly about her past work. Ariana answered honestly, but briefly. She spoke about crisis modeling, economic recovery, data-driven policy, and advisory roles across borders. She did not name companies unless asked. She never exaggerated. The more she spoke, the smaller the room felt. Margaret finally asked why Ariana chose to live so quietly. Ariana looked at her kindly and said, "Power that is visible attracts noise. Power that is quiet attracts trust." That sentence lingered. Vanessa then admitted something she had never said aloud. She confessed she felt threatened from the beginning. Ariana Grace made her uncomfortable because she did not compete. It simply existed. Vanessa's voice cracked as she admitted her family taught her to rank people and not understand them. Ariana listened without interruption. When Vanessa finished, Ariana said fear often disguises itself as judgment. She said she never wanted to take anything from Vanessa's place. She just wanted to be seen as human. Ethan finally spoke up. He admitted he hid Ariana's brilliance because he was afraid it would make him look small. The truth hurt, but it healed something too. Ariana forgave him fully. Richard sat back, visibly shaken. He confessed that he built his empire believing hierarchy protected order. Ariana challenged that belief. He admitted he was wrong. That admission changed everything. Margaret followed quietly. She apologized for her coldness and assumptions. She said she confused wealth with worth. Ariana accepted the apology but made one thing clear. Respect must be consistent, not reactive. Dinner ended differently than it began. There were no raised voices. Just honesty and discomfort that led to growth. As Ariana prepared to leave, Richard offered her a permanent role within the Whitmore network. She declined gently. She said she preferred independence. She said family should never be a transaction. That answer humbled them all. In the days that followed, whispers continued. The Whitmores adjusted their tone publicly. Their circle changed. They became more cautious and more reflective. Ariana returned to her life quietly again. No interviews. No headlines. But something had shifted inside her too. She realized her silence had protected others' comfort more than her own truth. Weeks later, she received a message from Jonathan. A global initiative needed leadership, not a face. Real leadership. He asked if she would consider it. Ariana thought about the party, the dinner, and everything she learned. She agreed. Not for status. For impact. And the final chapter would prove that ignoring someone does not make them small. It reveals who you are. Ariana stepped into her new role without announcement. There was no press release, no celebratory dinner, no social media applause. She began working quietly, assembling teams across continents, aligning data resources, and reshaping policies that affected millions. Her name rarely appeared anywhere, yet her influence was everywhere. Jonathan watched with admiration. He once told someone that Ariana did not chase power because power already followed her. Those who worked with her learned quickly that she demanded clarity, honesty, and results, not loyalty or praise. Months passed, and the world shifted in small, meaningful ways. Companies stabilized, regions recovered, and programs, once delayed, finally moved forward. Behind closed doors, people spoke about the strategist who solved problems others avoided. The Whitmores watched from a distance. Their social world remained intact, but something had changed. Invitations still arrived, but conversations felt thinner. People listened less and questioned more. The aura of untouchable authority had faded. Margaret began volunteering more genuinely. Richard stepped back from several boards, allowing younger voices space. Vanessa changed the most. She stopped competing and started learning. She reached out to Ariana not for advantage but for guidance. Ariana did not reject her. She met Vanessa for coffee once, no entourage, no pressure. They spoke as equals. Vanessa admitted she spent her life proving she deserved her name. Ariana said names do not need defending actions. That moment freed Vanessa in ways she never expected. Ethan grew stronger too. He stopped hiding behind connections and built his own path. He credited his sister not for saving him, but for showing him how to stand. 1 year after the party, the Whitmores hosted another event. Smaller, quieter, different. This time Ariana attended by choice. No one ignored her. No one surrounded her either. She stood exactly where she belonged. Someone new entered the room dressed simply, unknown to most. Ariana noticed immediately and greeted them warmly. Others watched confused. Curious. History repeated itself in reverse. Later, Jonathan raised a glass again. This time he did not name Ariana. He spoke about the danger of mistaking silence for weakness. He reminded everyone that true value reveals itself when arrogance fails. People listened. They always do in the end. Ariana left early, walking into the night calm and free. She did not need recognition. She had something stronger. Self-respect. The girl they ignored never sought revenge. She simply lived so fully and truthfully that the world had no choice but to recognize her. And that is the kind of power no elite circle can control.